instead, we are here to talk about sales to finance kind of workflows and must-dos and how to really scale that and automate that in a way that makes the most sense. And so I've got Rhea Grover, CEO and co-founder of Sequence, and you will be able to tell once Rhea introduces herself that she is not stateside. She is across the pond over in London. So Rhea, I warned you about this beforehand. I'll ask you now, add anything to that professional introduction you want. Tell us more about yourself and the company that you've co-founded, and then also give us one fun, interesting personal fact that is not RevOps, not startup, not company building related about yourself.
Awesome. Well, I was going to say you probably should keep going on the cheese curds because it sounds like you've got a lot more there. Hi, everybody. I am in London, but you might be able to tell from the accent that I spend a lot of time stateside and have lived there in the past. And yeah, I'm there a lot. So don't feel so far away. But great to be here, Matt. Thanks for having me. Just kind of to introduce myself and Sequence a bit more fully. We've been building Sequence for about 2 years now. We're an A16 backed company, really helping businesses to automate and unify their quote to revenue process. So helping RevOps and finance teams to automate pricing, billing, invoice management, integrate seamlessly with their data with their CRMs and ERPs. And ultimately enable kind of commercial teams to launch pricing proposals with any hybrid or custom pricing, like usage-based pricing, and then automate kind of all the downstream revenue operations off the back of it. So great fan of the RevOps community, and again, thank you for having me today. Fun facts, there are so many, but I think one that's quite interesting is when I was a teenager, my career dream was to run the United Nations. I thought this is the one thing that I really want to do. My first internship and job was at a think tank in Washington, D.C. And sometimes when I reflect on that now, it's kind of crazy because, I love what I do so much. I couldn't imagine either wanting to or being very good at running the United Nations.
I imagine while a startup and a company is incredibly hard and difficult to build, as I know, that running the United Nations is probably a bit more challenging. I'd say the startup thing is probably more fun. So I think you chose the right path there for sure, Rhea.
I can't imagine a better industry and time to be doing this. So I think I did. And the United Nations might be better off for it.
Yeah, I think you're better off for it too. So, but awesome. So today, so from United Nations to kind of company building in the really CPQ and quote to revenue space. And so today, what we wanted to talk about, because Rhea's obviously building kind of a company in the quote to revenue space. So she also has some kind of incredible customers that she's really seen at the forefront of kind of quote to revenue when it comes to being forward thinking, how to not only leverage technology, but also just like people and process along the way and really make the connection between sales and finance as seamless and efficient as possible. And so she's essentially packaged up some of the main things that she's seen a lot of her customers and the companies that she's worked with do. That's all say like technology agnostic, and those are the things that she's going to share with us today. So we're going to talk a little bit about how SaaS as a whole has really evolved in terms of going to market, how we started and kind of used to exist on this very simple like per user per month sort of approach, and now there's different go-to-market strategies. There's usage-based pricing, there's consumption, there's platform fee, they're charging for services, there's per member per month, per member per year, tons of different variations there. Talk a little bit about some of the trade-offs and friction points between sales and finance, specifically where there's opportunity, and then some very specific things that you all can do to eliminate those friction points, make them more seamless. talk a little bit about unified approach to CPQ and billing, what this means. It's a lot more than just technology. So we certainly will get into some tooling and things there, but talk a lot more about a lot more than just the tech. And then also how you all can leverage pricing and billing data in your go-to-market, things that she's seen work, things that you might think will work, but she knows don't work, so don't try them, and kind of everything sort of in between. So that is really the goal for today. Ria, is there anything that I didn't mention that the folks should know that we're going to kind of dive into today before I start peppering you with questions?
No, pepper me with questions, but just to kind of everybody listening, if you have other questions or topics you'd like to throw in, would love to, hear from everybody here, and we can sort of derail the planned conversation as that happens.
For sure. Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk first. So Sequence as a company building in the quote to revenue space, you've obviously helped a bunch of companies kind of manage and automate that entire process. So we talked a little bit about that in the first bullet point, right? SaaS overall has been changing. You know, a lot of us that work in the space are just consumers of SaaS products. We know that right, billing and all these things are evolving. So how have you seen specifically some of the pricing models for not only your customers, but just in the market in general, kind of change over the last, I'll say, several years? And then what are the implications like internally on the company side, right? Because a lot of us see the external facing things, right? Like, oh, you know, we'll now charge you differently, right? Based on like, oh, you want to get charged based on what you consume? Cool, we can totally do that. You want to get charged based on the number of people you have on the platform? Cool, we could totally do that. Maybe different products have different approaches, but what's it like actually on the, again, the internal side? Like, what are the implications to the companies of having those different pricing models and approaches?
Yeah, great question. I mean, maybe it's worth just kind of talking a little bit about what I think we've seen in the market over the last few years with respect to pricing strategies and kind of go-to-market motions. I mean, the first is that, definitely the reality is we're seeing pricing become maybe more complex, and companies increasingly combine multiple pricing models rather than replace. So you'll see many businesses today leveraging seat-based and usage-based and subscription pricing together. You can share a few examples of that. And this is driven by, new product launches, companies kind of expanding their product suite and the number of markets they're operating in quite quickly, expanding the number of customer segments that they're serving. Today we have this like very well built out infrastructure layer and DevOps tools that allow companies to build faster, build more software. And this is manifesting, I think, in these sort of multi-product suites where pricing is becoming more multi-layered and hopefully value aligned as well. And we see the most successful companies leveraging hybrid pricing. So for example, HubSpot blends subscription and consumption-based pricing using the former as an accessible model for its core modules, whilst leveraging the latter to monetize further when utilization for specific services exceeds package limits, like email sends or the number of contacts in the CRM, or usage of advanced tools beyond the basic subscription. I think Intercom just launched a new much tested pricing model combining two different seat types, pay per seat and package light, as well as kind of fixed price add-ons and a number of usage-based items, including their new kind of AI bot. And I guess on the subject of sort of usage-based pricing, the word is being thrown out a lot, but I think with good reason. Stripe actually just said in their last Stripe sessions that 80% of companies either today use or plan to use usage-based pricing, 80% of SaaS companies. What you'll see on the slide here is something from OpenView, where they talk about 61% of SaaS companies now using dynamic usage-based pricing, and also kind of some data around higher forecasted year-on-year revenue growth versus in industry peers if they do. And it's interesting, I guess, to think about why. I know certain industries, this has always been like the default pricing model, fintechs as an example. But often when the infrastructure layer is priced based on usage, companies building on top of that are incentivized to do the same to keep their margin. And we're seeing this very much prevalent in the emerging AI industry. And so with cost structures and AI infra evolving so rapidly, these usage-based pricing models allow companies to sell AI-based products to adapt their charges and maintain a cost plus margin if usage exceeds what they anticipated. And then, you'll see companies using prepaid credits, for example, to capture upfront revenue and prevent kind of unexpected usage surges. But we certainly kind of, from our perspective, see very widespread adoption of the model, but not in isolation, typically as a kind of hybrid strategy with other pricing models. And then I guess some of the other market trends that we see as well, there's been a big shift towards companies running a hybrid go-to-market motion as well. So combining traditional top-down sales with bottom-up adoption. And ultimately, the kind of implication of all of this is that the back office infrastructure and the financial operations and revenue operations to manage this is getting more complex, right? It's the clash of the highly automated API-based self-serve world, the PLG bottom-up motion, with what is typically the highly manual, bespoke, one-off sales-led world. And unifying these two in a seamless way is quite difficult for companies. So, consider things like pricing, packaging, discounts, freemium customers getting upsold to a contract. In some cases, we've seen entire engineering departments that sort of manage pricing, packaging, and billing. So, part of the reason we're playing in this space is that we think the move to this modern pricing world, so to speak, in software selling opens up opportunity for new infrastructure to really service this. And then I think two last trends that maybe I'll highlight very quickly. One is that I think there's just a general trend towards kind of reducing friction in transactions. So we've seen lots of investment in tooling and PLG, powered by Stripe to a large extent. And I think revenue management in the B2B sales side of things is still lagging behind and needs to catch up. And then I think the last trend that we see very much from our customers is that modern sales, operations, and finance teams work far less in silos. Like, they are more interconnected now, and they need to communicate across multiple workflows. So I think the previous generation of products, CPQ products or billing products, typically would cater to kind of one of these teams. And again, we think there's an opportunity in sort of why we're building sequences that there's really an opportunity to consolidate the workflow between CPQ and billing, sales and finance, because really we see them as sort of two sides of the same coin in many ways.
Yeah, and it makes sense. So I was thinking about some of the things you mentioned. For example, like at RevOps Co-op, we use HubSpot and Zapier heavily, and I was thinking about what you mentioned specifically with HubSpot about the like their pricing. And at first I was like, well, how does HubSpot do that? I was like, we've been using them for years. Like, what do you mean they have this like kind of dynamic like hybrid? And then you brought up, right, like the different modules that you can buy on and those might be seat based. And then we just went through this before. It was like, oh, your contact database is growing, you're now over the limit, you got to go to the next tier up, right? That's going to cost X number more dollars, or email sends, things like that. And so I guess the thing that kind of clicked for me was it's similar to the best products out there. Like the best pricing approaches seem not noticeable by call it the consumer, right? Like for me, even like as a HubSpot user now for how many years, like you brought up that point, I actually had to think through the fact that I was getting charged in different ways. And so I think that's a key part of this, right? Is like all of these things, right? You don't want to necessarily force yourself to do more than you necessarily need to. And when you do think about different ways to price and generate positive financial outcomes for yourself as a business, right? Like just like you would with your product, like those should appear natural, organic to the end user, to the consumer.
I mean, I think it's a great point, Matt, that like companies should never intend to have complex pricing. In fact, it should be the absolute opposite. Pricing should be as simple as it can be in the early days, especially to sort of really communicate kind of easily to customers. But in HubSpot's example, they've grown their product suite, and there are certain aspects of their platform that where a usage-based pricing model is actually the best one for it. We gave the example of email sends. And so, as their product suite has grown and as their segments have grown as well, it's been very natural to kind of evolve into this multi-pricing world. I'd also add, by the way, that one of the sources of complexity definitely comes for companies when they're sales led and they have custom deal terms per customer. So it's, one thing having very standardized buckets, but the reality is when you sell, you are negotiating, discounts or ramps or trial periods to get deals over the line. And, we talk about infrastructure and platforms needing to keep up with hyper pricing strategy. They also need to be able to keep up with, the workflow of individual custom deal terms per customer and sort of manage that seamlessly.
Yeah. So, okay. So we just talked about, call it the current reality and the fact that there's been, a big shift, right? There, pricing is, call it inherently more, at least complicated or complex in terms of a lot of software companies are doing more than just, the standard like per user stuff that they used to be doing. So what are the, like obviously there's implications on how you like the deals that you close and right, like everything that happens on the sales side, but then it can be kind of easy, or at least it has been easy in the past to like forget about all the things that happen once the deal is done, right? To actually like charge the customer, bill them for the right things, and actually like collect the cash to obviously keep the business running. But then, that's the way that you also generate revenue that you recognize on your financial statements that demonstrates the financial performance of the company. And I think recently there's been a lot more focus, and obviously like this is like you're building a company in this space of like the connection between sales and finance. So how should folks think about like nothing's perfect. There's going to be trade-offs with everything, right? Like you can't have it all. So as folks look at making that connection between sales and finance, optimizing it, making it more efficient, like how should folks think about the trade-offs that are there? What are the things that you've seen work well, not work well? Like where should you give and where should you get? Like what are the things you want to make sure you kind of take when it comes to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge topic, and maybe I'll kind of talk to a couple of points around it. That, I guess the general mantra goes, sales don't want friction. They don't want anything kind of holding them back from closing a deal. When they're sharing pricing and they're signing deals and negotiating contracts, everything is about getting that deal over the line. And, RevOps and finance teams want structure. They want better data. They want clear process. And I think those two things are sort of perceived to be a trade-off where sales are optimizing for pricing flexibility to win deals, and finance need to ensure they can actually invoice the signed deal terms in a reasonable way. And I think ultimately most companies want to maintain that pricing agility without compromising billing accuracy, causing revenue leakage. I think that's a given. Some things we've seen companies do. So they'll establish sort of clear pricing guidelines, well-defined pricing principles, policies that allow for flexible selling, but sort of set a clear boundary. So, you can use discounts, but don't use more than this. If you're going to charge on usage, we need to make sure we can actually measure that metric. And obviously this helps sales teams understand what's negotiable and what isn't. This is typically achieved through the implementation of a CPQ tool, but ultimately also needs to be supplemented by sort of strong communication and relationship and feedback loops between those teams. And then we've also seen some teams implement approval flows where sales and finance stakeholders sign off on new deals. And this ensures sort of obviously compliance with pricing policies and operational feasibility before finalizing a contract. But the interesting thing is, obviously there's streamlining the process between sales to finance and making sure that, finance can build the things that are being sold. But there's also it's really important that there's very good alignment in data between those two teams for a number of reasons. So let's, for example, a company with usage-based pricing and custom deal terms, like you'll see frequent conflicts arise when sales are celebrating seemingly high value ACV deals based on the predicted usage of that customer, and in many cases actually being commissioned on the basis of those kind of closed won values. But finance, the story finance are seeing on their side in terms of actual revenue collected and actually like how that revenue sets in after implementation time can be quite different. And if finance can't kind of seamlessly share that data back with RevOps or sales leaders in real time, it becomes really hard to sort of manage that commission piece. And we've also seen some examples of sales kind of using usage metrics to price, which actually can't be accurately tracked and billed against. On the finance side, we recently had this Series B marketplace customer who'd moved from percentage GMV based pricing to per buyer pricing due to the difficulty in tracking and accurately invoicing for the former. But actually, there was this kind of huge history of contracts that had been sold on the former model, and it was really painful from a customer perspective and internally to recalculate deals based on the metric that could actually be tracked. And so I guess kind of the point there is that, you know, it's really important, obviously, that you can bill on the right metrics, but also that there's a lot of value to sales and revenue teams from being able to share back revenue data with the sales teams kind of following billing cycles. And so I guess billing and pricing data is extremely relevant to share back with the commercial teams, as well as obviously being able to kind of receive it in a way that allows for easy billing.
Yeah, and it makes sense because even if you think about things like usage, consumption-based pricing, for example, even that customer that you mentioned, who went from one pricing mechanism to another, right? Like those things impact like incentive compensation, they influence forecast, right? Like renewal forecasting, all those things, right? That are very much within the RevOps scope. So it's not only about information that goes from sales to finance, but it's also the flow back from finance to sales or go-to-market revenue team, right? It's not it's really not a one-way street.
If you think about this kind of customer life cycle, and you sell a contract once, and then there's likely to be sort of upsell, cross-sell, renewals that happen over the life cycle of that deal, that obviously sales are informing finance about, but also there's all this kind of critical usage and revenue data that sales and customer success teams need to have to hand to, I guess, really optimize the revenue across the life cycle of a deal. And actually, sometimes a lot of the friction comes from revenue teams not being able to see that data. Just to give you an example, on the usage-based revenue side of things, like if you sell a contract and you sell a usage-based, one of the products is a usage-based pricing charge, you as a sales team yourself don't actually necessarily know what the consumption is going to be against that product. And in order to renew and upsell a customer appropriately, or even just to kind of get commissioned accurately, you need to be able to track that. So finance need the billing engine, the infrastructure to be able to support that, but they also need the syncs back to the CRM to be able to really push that data to where sales teams live. I think it's really critical to point out that ultimately the source of truth and the place sales teams and revenue teams are going to live is the CRM, and it's critical that whatever software you're using allows you to kind of really elegantly sync that back to the CRM, so that's the source of truth.
Yeah, and so when it comes to like some specific, I guess, workflows that sit between sales and go-to-market and your finance team, and again, not just we were just talking about how it's not a one-way street, right? It's go-to-market to finance, it's finance back to your go-to-market team. What are some of the specific things that you've seen sit between those teams? And then, what are some things that folks who are listening in can think about as it relates to their own company and their own processes that are not just, again, like technology related on the solution side, but like what are some things that people can solve with technology? Where do you still need people and just better process? And how can folks start to tackle some of those specific workflows and connections between the go-to-market and finance teams?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've covered some of them already, but just some examples. So signed order forms or quotes need to sync with the billing engine, ideally without kind of manual re-entry of data, because that's where errors can occur. You might sort of have revenue slippage problems. Finance might want approval of view on deals that are getting signed. Sales will update contracts with upsells, new products, which will change the terms of a customer's billing schedule. Finance need to be notified about that. Similarly, finance will want to notify customer success of unpaid invoices. or upcoming renewals. Usage changes should be pushed back to sales and success teams so they can use this to strategically manage the health of the account. RevOps teams are going to want clear data on pricing variations, revenue data. They're going to want to slice that by product or customer segment. They're going to want to understand what their growth drivers are, so that they can obviously inform kind of go-to-market behavior going forward. And so, like, there's all this kind of critical data that's been collected by the billing system that has this huge strategic revenue for sales and revenue teams. And I think that's why, we really internally sort of advocate for a unified product with the sort of same underlying kind of source of truth data, because it really allows you to achieve consistency and to be able to kind of push those, both achieve those operational workflows, but also kind of push those data flows in both directions.
Yeah. Yeah, and it makes sense. And a lot of that stuff too, I mean, like you said, for example, the invoice status, right? Unpaid invoices, or things that are paid, obviously, like plenty of different ways that you can like solve that problem. Obviously, like if you have shared access, across teams to the same technology that tells you the invoice status, that's one way. Also, like, can be accomplished if you have a weekly or bi-weekly team meeting between finance and sales, right? One of the agenda items can be, let's talk about unpaid invoices for some of our largest customers, right? Or finance can send out like a regular update email. So there's like progress steps that you can take on the solution side to help accomplish those things, but those are all very much key elements of that relationship, right, between the go-to-market sales team and the finance team. So I know one of the, outside of the specific kind of workflows we talked about, obviously, like, having some sort of unified product technology sitting in the middle can be a big value add. So what are some of the specifics on how technology can actually help bridge that gap between the go-to-market and finance team? And obviously, like, you'll be talking about like things from the Sequence perspective, but I think, again, this is just applicable to anyone as you think about how to facilitate this connection with technology and how to really do it the right way. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what this diagram kind of really showcases is that everybody's got their CRM over here, and everybody's got an ERP or an accounting platform, where they're closing the books, and sort of a lot of the kind of revenue operations of configuring pricing, quotes, billing, invoice generation sits in the middle of that. But critically kind of needs to be really well synced across those two systems. And then data needs to be flowing both ways. And then you've got this kind of added layer if you are a usage-based pricing company. Those usage-based prices need to be included both in your quotes, but also in the billing calculations. And so you want to be syncing data from your own product or data warehouse. And so I think what you see here is, all the arrows, I guess, kind of pointing to sort of data flowing between these systems. And when you have a distinct, separate kind of potentially CPQ product or quoting process and finance tool, very often you will not achieve that kind of synchronous workflow across these two things. And I think also, like, when you look at something like this is quite a static illustration, but ultimately, pricing is going to change. A company's product suite is going to change as they scale. And you want to make sure that when you make changes, that change can kind of actually take effect across your workflow really easily. That if you change your pricing structure, that will inform a change in your quoting piece, but actually, more importantly, it also really changes how you bill and invoice customers. And so having that ability to make changes as you grow, both workflow changes and pricing changes, I think is much easier when you have this kind of unified product experience across the two things.
Yeah. And so next I want to talk about the pros and cons, I guess, of leveraging technology to fill this gap. I think regardless of call it the tool or tools that you're using, because even like, right, you have unified products like Sequence, like others, Salesforce, CPQ, others that are call it in this space of trying to make the connection between call it the CRM and the ERP or the accounting system. In some cases you just have a bunch of spreadsheets as well, and like people doing things, and then everything in between. So regardless of I'll say the technology or tools that are getting used, what do you recommend people look at in terms of what are the things they should be doing to leverage the pricing and billing data that they have, again, whether it's in a unified tool or a spreadsheet, to help them better go to market and drive more revenue? What are some ways that you've seen customers and people in the market leverage that data today to help drive better outcomes?
Yeah, it's a great question. And by the way, I think the spreadsheet is, one of the greatest products
Yeah.
ever created and continues to be. We all use spreadsheets every day. I think the challenge here comes with when you're signing custom deal terms, and every customer is potentially on a slightly distinct schedule, and that schedule has potentially a few different pricing products and pricing models associated with it, and you're obviously also trying to track consumption of that customer. It can just become very challenging, difficult, manual, time-consuming, error-prone to do that in a spreadsheet, which is obviously where kind of software can fill the gap. But in terms of kind of what data you might want to leverage to actually improve your go-to-market strategy, I mean, firstly, it's really valuable to be able to capture kind of pricing data across every deal, and have a source of truth of that, and kind of have that captured in a really systematic way, so you can really understand variations in how you're selling, and also how different deals are equating to revenue. And as I said before, companies, RevOps leaders are going to want to take revenue data and break it down across customer segments or product lines and things like this. Again, capturing this data in a systematic way from quote to revenue can really help you do that. We've seen interesting examples where companies kind of make the mistake of kind of not implementing adequate billing or infrastructure, and then this actually having a really big impact on revenue teams. So for example, you start off with a fairly simple pricing model, maybe a subscription business, and you implement quite a simple sort of subscription billing platform. And then you actually expand your go-to-market motion. You maybe add a second pricing model, or you start doing sales-led as well as PLG. And you start managing this outside of the system, and kind of essentially what it means is that like you have data existing in these different silos, never getting connected, and it's just really, really hard to build a full picture. We're so surprised when teams come to us, scaled companies, Series B, C onwards, who actually will say like, we don't have a great handle on our own revenue data, on our own kind of key metrics. And that is because this data is living siloed. Different teams are working in different spreadsheets, or they've got kind of a billing tool handling a portion of their customers, but not all of them. And I think ultimately, like, this is the most critical data in the business to inform, what the business should be doing. RevOps leaders absolutely want to understand what's driving their revenue, and be able to kind of forecast revenue based on usage, and understand kind of deal velocity and things like this. And there's a lot of very valuable information that's captured across quote to revenue that we think it's really critical to be able to sort of surface in real time back to our customers.
Yeah, makes sense. And so I guess we hit on some of the things that people can, ways that people can leverage some of the pricing and billing data that they have to drive better outcomes for their revenue teams. So now I want to get into, I guess, some of the pros and cons of like leveraging technology to fill this gap between the CRM and the ERP system. So I guess let's start with some of the pros. What are some of the pros? And I know you just hit on some of having like one piece of technology to help you solve this particular problem. And then after that, I'll ask you about the cons too.
Well, I mean, maybe we'll focus more on the CPQ piece, because I think, as soon as a company's billing 10 or 15 customers, they should absolutely have a billing and invoicing tool in place.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's a lot of kind of discussion about the pros and cons of CPQ, and does a business need a price configuration engine for their sales teams? So I think some of the pros, I mean, first kind of increased accuracy, ensuring quotes are accurate, actually reflect the current pricing strategies, and there's a kind of fairly large degree of consistency across the team. I think the second is efficiency in the sales process. So really saving the sales team time, allowing them to spin up really beautiful pricing proposals quickly from their CRM, and have these kind of look aesthetically consistent and really delightful for the end customer as well. And on that point, I think we talked a little bit earlier about kind of consumer grade technology for enterprise. We've seen this happen in the self-serve world, but it's also time that B2B sales teams get really nice digital kind of quoting and invoicing flows for their end customers, who are B2B on the sales side. And so I think there's a CPQ, especially sort of the modern generation of products, can really help improve and enhance that customer experience. And then obviously this sync that we're talking about with billing and ERP, and kind of creating that source of truth of pricing data, and being able to feed that accurately into the billing engine. That's a huge advantage of adopting a CPQ product, and streamlining this workflow. And obviously, if it's a unified product experience like this, then that sort of becomes even easier to sync.
Mm-hmm. And so,
and yeah, so you also asked about some of the cons. So
yeah, I was gonna say, so those are the benefits, right? So what are either the cons or the drawbacks, or even the gotchas? Like, what are some things that, as people look at their existing CPQ tool, or if they're looking for something like something new, like what are the things that they should be aware of or be weary of that can come back to bite them?
I mean, my take on this is that actually, a lot of legacy products in this space have given CPQ a pretty bad rap. If you take something like Salesforce CPQ, really high initial setup costs, a huge amount of time to set up, lots of ongoing costs relating to maintenance and updates, and frankly, not that easy to make pricing changes or product changes as you scale, or even workflow changes as you scale. And yeah, I mean, Brittany, lack of dynamic pricing as well. Like it's, it's actually really hard to reflect your business in that product without kind of extensive cost up front. And so I think, given that Salesforce CPQ is sort of the legacy player that set the standard around, or I guess for a long time was the default player in this space, what we see is that people have this perception that it's a really hard thing to set up and it's going to take a long time, whereas actually, this should be something that's, people should be able to build and edit their product catalog in hours, and sync in with their CRM really quickly, and kind of customize the template that they're using, and essentially be able to start sending out contracts, within a day. And I think turning that on its head, I think is really important probably for teams to sort of adopt a product like this sooner. And then I think another point, maybe a con of, again, maybe some of the kind of legacy solutions is, people will sell guardrails and they'll sell constraints and maybe too much process on sales teams that are quite young. Truth is, when you're a small team, you don't necessarily need that many guardrails baked into the system. You're communicating as a team, your sales team know what they're doing, and actually you're probably still experimenting with pricing a fair amount. And so I think the approach we've really taken with this is that companies should be, be able to have a very lightweight process at the outset, and kind of layer on flexibly constraints as they scale, and very kind of a very kind of rules-based approach to it as well, whereby companies can choose their own variables on which they want to layer constraints, rather than having this very limited, I guess, model for what they can do. And then I think, Brittany, you hit on it here. Like, I think the last wave of CPQ systems were excellent for handling standard configurations, but really not very effective for sort of nuances or custom things that fall outside of that. And ultimately that proves to be limiting for sales teams, which means that companies kind of shy away from adopting a CPQ product. the truth is actually if a product can allow you to handle those edge cases very flexibly, then that drawback doesn't exist in such a strong way anymore.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, I had to laugh when you mentioned CPQ getting a bad rap based on things that I think most people have experienced in their career over the past, because a lot of the products or the tools like Sequence, the new age solutions, right? The ones that are getting built today with today's user in mind and today's technology are not, at least have not, prevalently been, distributed into the market yet. So yeah, we all have our battle wounds and scars from, like you said, the Salesforce CPQ solutions, and yeah, we don't know, call it the joy or the ease that we can experience with some of the new products today. One of the last things that I'm curious about, which, again, we at least may not come naturally for folks to think about, is like call it the finance team, the finance user, the CFO, the team that exists over there. Obviously, within RevOps land, we all have our tools, our technology, our people, our processes that we're using, we're following, we're very familiar with all of that. But I call it finance are people too. They have their processes, they have their tools, they have their tech stack. And especially now, given everything that's been happening in the market over the last couple of years, the role of the CFO and the finance team has really been elevated, especially on the cost or the OpEx side. But as it relates at least to the things that you're seeing today, obviously building a product and then seeing all of your customers and companies, kind of make this connection between sales and finance. What's important to the CFO? Like, what are the things you're talking to the finance teams about? And like, what does their world look like? What's the tech stack look like? What are the processes that they have? Like, what's important to them, so that, again, within RevOps, we can all understand, what's critical to finance, and how do we kind of fit in, and how can we kind of go back and forth and really help each other out?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of finance leaders we speak to today, have a very close relationship with their RevOps leader in the business, and increasingly kind of want to be strategic about how to really arm the RevOps function with the right data and the right information. But one of the interesting things I think we've seen is there's been a lot of talk in the last couple of years about, the modern CFO stack, and how there needs to be a real overhaul in the way in finance systems. And you'll see, historically you'd have some finance teams who would have huge armies of people doing a lot of things manually, like invoicing, that don't need to be done manually, but B, maybe like 8 or 9 different point solutions, or more like 10 or 12 different point solutions across the finance stack. And I think what you're seeing today is, everybody will have an accounting tool or ERP, QuickBooks, Xero, NetSuite, Puzzle. And then around that, like a small number of best-in-class operational platforms. So, one, you'll have a bank account for cash and treasury management. You'll have a tool for spend and procurement, like Ramp or Zip. You'll have a tool for revenue and receivables management, so pricing management, subscription management, billing, invoicing, and RevRec. And then a tool on the FP&A side. And the interesting thing here is, like, for those other kind of 4 categories, those workflows are largely confined to finance teams, maybe with the exception of FP&A, which touches a lot of other teams in the business. But the revenue platform is just needs to be so closely tied to sales, what sales are doing, and that data needs to be really synchronous, and that's where I think the quote to revenue category is like really sort of emergent, and we're seeing some really great tools come up in the space. As why we're playing in the space, we think there's a really good opportunity to arm the strategic CFO with a great product on the revenue side that's like really well synced with the sales side of the business, with the revenue side of the business.
Yeah, it's easy to, again, I kind of mentioned this before, like, it's easy to forget that, like on the RevOps side, right? All those new customers that your sales team closes, all of those renewals that come through, every single month, all of those upsells or cross sells that your team makes, right? Like at the end of the day, like those all have their own sets of rules in terms of how they get recorded on the financial statements, and your finance team essentially like make sure that that happens in the right way. And if they don't do it the right way, they can get into a lot of trouble from, investors, their board, financial regulators. And so there's a lot of pressure put on them to do things the right way. And when you have some technology that can automate things, and I think especially with the rise of ML and Gen AI, right? Like if you think about this, like we have these contracts, all the data exists there. If you're able to easily pull information out of those contracts, put it into like a database that is in a systematic way can be leveraged to invoice, bill, generate insights, right? Like that's where there's massive opportunity, and why a lot of the things that are being built today are truly game changing when you consider the things that have existed for the past 10 plus years, right? So I think that's where there is a lot of opportunity, and I think folks would be kind of in a good spot to start to evaluate some of those new technology players that are out there for sure.
I mean, you're absolutely right. Like ultimately that contract data, everything that sits in that contract, the reason it's in there primarily is because you're looking to collect revenue against it, and having that data accessible in a structured kind of streamlined way is really like ultimately this kind of critical ingredient to being able to sort of collect revenue and scale. And so it's really remarkable that so many companies still have people like inputting this manually into their finance system. Actually, on that point, we actually recently launched a really cool, what we call kind of magic contract translation flow, where we can pull, if you're not using our CPQ product or a quote builder, we could just pull a signed contract from Salesforce directly and read that contract using AI, pull out all the pricing terms and commercial terms sold, and kind of have that obviously kind of in a structured format, so RevOps teams can track it, but also so that finance teams can automatically bill against it. So it's been pretty powerful to leverage AI to do that, and I think extremely powerful for our customers as well.
Yeah, that's great. So in the I guess in the last few minutes, what are some, I guess call it closing remarks, things on this whole topic of must-dos in the finance or in the sales to finance workflow department that you would leave folks with, right? If you want to leave something with them that's kind of top of mind, what are the things that revenue operators should really focus on today with that connection between go-to-market and finance?
I mean, I think my one takeaway or kind of departing comment would be think about CPQ and billing holistically. Like ultimately the process of sort of sharing, configuring pricing and getting deals signed is with the ultimate goal to collect revenue, and again, capturing that data in a way that both finance and RevOps teams can use with a sort of unified source of truth from CRM to ERP is going to be really, really powerful for your business. So I encourage teams not to think about those decisions in complete isolation, because I think it becomes really, really challenging to sync both workflows and data down the line if that's the case.
Yeah, whether it's people, process, technology, I think like you said, the notion of like CPQ and billing being two separate, call it things, right, is where we need to, like, that can be the first step that we all take to taking a big leap forward. And then from there, again, when you start to look at it that way as one combined process, one combined group of people, one combined piece of technology, that's when you can really start to make a lot of progress. So Ria, thank you very much for kind of joining, dropping some knowledge on us. I want to bring up a couple of things for folks as we kind of wrap up. So one, I forgot to mention this at the very beginning. Ria and her team Sequence, they will be at RevOps AF in San Diego, which starts in exactly 2 weeks. So I think David on our team dropped in the chat a little discount code. If you haven't snagged your ticket yet, feel free to do that. We have people coming from Tokyo, London, Dublin, and so I know that travel can always get in the way, but we got folks coming from all over the world. There'll be 200, 250 plus folks there. So if you want to hang out with some RevOps friends, attend some really great content and sessions, get some of the Southern California sunshine and ocean waves. Plus, we have like an after party, tons of great experiences. Like, trust me, you will have a blast. So join us. We've got information in the chat on that. And then the other thing I'll mention is there will be when everybody gets off of the Zoom, there will be a quick event survey. I think it's like 2 questions. If you can fill that out and let us know what you thought of things today, that would be super helpful and appreciative. And then we will put the recording and a full write-up up on our website in the next week, 2 weeks. So keep an eye out for that as well. But with that, Ria, I will let you run and I will let everybody else run. So thank you all for joining today, listening in. Ria, thank you very much for dropping some knowledge on us too. But with that, I'll let you all split. So take it easy, everybody, and I'll see you on the flip side.
Thanks, Matt. Bye, everyone.
All right. See you, everybody.